much. Let's bring in White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki. She's here ahead of President Biden's first UN General Assembly address as president. And Jen, I want to get to that. It's a big address from the president, but these images along the border are shocking, and the bar is high for shocking images along the border. You've called them horrific. What did the president say? How did he feel when he saw them?
He also felt they were horrific and horrible. I don't know anyone who could watch that video and not have that emotion. Last night, our Secretary of Homeland Security put out a statement conveying there'd be an investigation, that he's going to send additional personnel. And I think it's important for people to know this is not who we are. That's not who the Biden-Harris administration is. And we're going to absolutely pursue that investigation and get to the bottom of what happened here.
Meanwhile, deportation flights are ongoing. And I think what's confusing for people there is Secretary Mayorkas back in May said to Haitian nationals already here, we know things are so terrible in your country that you're going to get a temporary extension. We're not going to send you back. Your case is going to be ongoing. You're going to be here. Shouldn't that same idea apply now?
You're right. Temporary protected status, which is something the Secretary and the Secretary of State also put in place. They actually extended it further because of the turmoil on the ground into later in the summer. Now, anyone who is here before then may be eligible for temporary protected status, and we're looking into that. People may be eligible for that. But right now, we also have to implement our laws at the border. We also want to protect people, both in that community, but also migrants. One of the challenges, as we're all facing a pandemic here, is the gathering of so many people. We're still implementing Title 42, which means that we are going to send people out of the country who come in as we implement that.
A COVID safety protocol.
Exactly.
But did you say that it's possible that that extension that applies to Haitians already here could apply to those coming across the border now?
Well, Tony, it's already been extended because of the turmoil on the ground. It was earlier this summer. That's something that the Secretary of Homeland Security and Secretary of State do look into. But again, as we look to the photos, not just the ones you referenced, but of all of these families and people under the bridges, we wanted to also take steps to implement our laws and to protect a lot of them from the spread of COVID as well.
You know, there's a lot of incoming, Jen, at the White House these days. What will be the president's message today at the United General Assembly? Well, he appears to be really under the gun on so many different levels.
Well, the way the president views it, and we all view it, is that's what you do as president. You navigate crises, you weather storms, and we're certainly doing that right now. But this is a huge opportunity today for the president. He's obviously been on the world stage for a long time, but he's going to say to the world, all the leaders in the room, we're not looking inward after we end a 20-year war. We're going to look outward, and we're going to prioritize what's most important to address, whether that's the climate crisis, whether that's cyber threats, continuing to work with partners on counterterrorism. And that's what we need to have our resources and focus and our eyes on. And we're going to do that through rebuilding our allies and partnerships.
I think it's good to say we're going to look outward, but we can't ignore what has happened before. We're still getting hammered for how the withdrawal from Afghanistan happened. Everybody knows, many people believe it was time. It's just the way that it was done. So we all agree with that. That's not a good look. You look at what's happening with immigration. You look at France now saying that they've been betrayed by the United States. So I get that we have to look forward, but what are we doing to justify or explain what appears to be very bad behavior on our part now?
We don't see it that way. One, we have a long-abiding relationship, friendship, alliance with France. What we're talking about here, this is about an economic deal. We have the best nuclear technology in the world, and the Australians wanted our technology. Prior to that, they were buying this from France. We understand that. They're displeased about that. But we have a long-abiding friendship with them that's going to endure. And we are going to rely on that long history of friendships. But I think the president is the first to say, you've got to work on relationships. We know this in our real lives as well. Yeah. And he's here to do that too. So that when he speaks to the world today, he's going to convey alliances are the backbone of who we are. We're going to build and address these issues in the world based on those alliances, climate, cyber, counterterrorism, whatever it may be.
Now, speaking of those relationships, how does he plan to address the relationship with China that has been described as dysfunctional?
Well, we heard the UN Secretary General describe it that way. We don't agree with that assessment. The president met with him last night and conveyed, you do not have to be concerned that we're trying to start a Cold War with China. That is not what the United States is going to do. And the president will address that in his speech today. but we do see the relationship through the prism of competition. China is a competitor, but it's not a country we want to have conflict with. So what people will hear the president talk about is where we have issues, we will raise them, but we will also look to areas where we can work together, and we need to work together.
Jen, the UN Secretary General has also said that on climate change, the time is up. That needs to unite the world. Action needs to happen.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, here in this country, Joe Manchin, senator from West Virginia, made $500,000 on coal production last year. His son runs a coal company that he founded, and he's got more donations from fossil fuel companies than anyone else in the Senate. What's the world supposed to think when they see that's the individual helping shape climate policy here in this country?
Well, I think a lot of people in Congress would argue that he's shaping climate policy in the United States. We do need his vote in order to get the president's package across the finish line. That is going to be a historic investment in addressing the climate crisis. The president agrees with the UN Secretary General, but what we're trying to do right now, we're navigating through. Sausage making is messy, so even as the president's at the UN General Assembly, our team at home is working with members of Congress to get this package that has a huge climate investment across the finish line. The world will certainly be watching. You're right.
And Americans should feel confident in that climate package, given the author of it, or a key shaper of that policy, Joe Manchin?
Well, I think Americans can look at the details. American people are smart. We don't need to underestimate their intelligence out there. Not suggesting you are, but anyone who is should not do that. What they can see is this is a historic investment in electric vehicles and setting high standards and making sure that we are making the investment now to address what is a crisis that is happening now. We need to take steps now.
All right. Well, it's nothing yet, but it's being worked on.
We're getting there.
The sausage
Stay
is
with
being
us.
made.
Stay with us
We'll
on
be
it,
served
Tony.
later.
Making is
Yes.
That's right. Very messy always.
All right. Jen, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.